Welcome back to the Modern Kingsman podcast. Today we're going to be diving into another episode on our religious series. Today's topic, non-controversial again. Imagine that. What are we talking about today?
Well, we're going to go a little bit deep diving into the weeds today.
Okay.
We're going to cover two topics. Stay with us. We're going to cover Calvinism
Oh boy.
versus Arminianism.
Ooh.
Now, I'm going to be honest with you. I didn't know jack about these.
Who picked this?
Irrelevant. But these terms, we've kind of been tossing them around a little bit these last couple weeks.
Mm-hmm.
Until today, I've never looked them up.
Interesting. Okay.
Yeah. So
we're going in this cold turkey.
yes, we are all going to learn a bit together. Very, very high level stuff. And the reason is, as soon as you start diving into a little bit more the history on beliefs, we're going to focus specifically on like the Protestant ones today. You start noticing there's some patterns that people tend to reference back to. These are two of the terms, Calvinism and Arminianism, that really tend to just weave their way through a tremendous amount of Protestantism.
And yet no one seems to know what they mean.
None of the laymen do. And I'd assume a lot of the pastors do. At least I'd like to think they do. But, and this is just more for discussion. This isn't the who's right, who's not. But we both briefly viewed this list before deep diving. Mm-hmm. This is going to be very fun.
It is.
Very intriguing.
Especially because if you're Arminian, you think Calvinism is crazy. And if you're a Calvinism, you think you have the only way.
Yeah.
So there's no way we offend anyone by this episode.
Yes. So, again, we are laymen in this discussion here. We're going to go through Calvinism first, then Arminianism, and we're just going to talk through these points here. We're going to do 5 points each, and we're just going to learn this together. You ready?
Let's do it.
All right. So, you know what? We're going to do a quick item here. For reference, because this is the way I wanted to do it, Calvinism, these are churches, so denominations, generally are Presbyterian and Reformed.
I was going to say, we should probably preference this with this discussion that we're talking about. Arminianism and Calvinism are generally specific to the Protestant religion. Catholicism and Orthodox predate this, and it's usually specific only to Protestant beliefs. Churches, there's variation in different denominations that believe, but on a whole, he's got a list on which ones believe which.
Yeah. So Calvinism, we're going to call this Reformed. So this would be Presbyterian churches, such as Orthodox Presbyterian and Presbyterian Church of America, and anything with the word Reformed usually falls into this. Reformed Baptist, Dutch, Continental, etc.
Yeah, Presbyterian or Reformed.
Arminianism, this is pretty much the most common ones elsewhere.
Everything else.
Yeah. Methodist, Wesleyan, Southern Baptist, General Baptist, and Pentecostal.
Yep.
So there's your general high level items, and then as we go through the specifics, you'll see, oh, that's where my church pulled that from. That's where they went, oh, they disagree on that particular item here, and I'm ignoring things like Geneva and Heidelberg Conventions and things like that.
Yeah.
So we're going to go top level here. All right. We're going to hit 1 point at a time.
Go
cool.
ahead. Yep.
All right. Calvinism, named after John Calvin.
No.
Super heavy on God being in total control.
Yep.
Now, and they have a little acronym to remember the 5 points of Calvinism.
Really?
They call it TULIP, T-U-L-I-P. And now we're going to hit all 5 of those. Number 1, total depravity.
Ooh, that's a big word.
Yeah.
Well, it's not really that big, but it sounds big.
Humans are so messed up by sin, we can't even want God on our own. We are dead in sin, not just sick.
Yes. I think this one is very, very important, critical to their belief system. They truly believe that every person is completely helpless in all means, in every way, especially in terms of salvation. You have no means, method, or way of any sort of anything with salvation without God.
Yeah, we are bad, born bad, hopeless. Apart from God, nothing good.
It is very depressing, as the name might imply.
Number 2, and again, when we get to the opposing side, we'll start tying them back together.
Yep.
But number 2, unconditional election. God picks who gets saved before time started, not based on anything we do, just his choice.
Yes, very critical there. The choice of salvation is not in the moment. It was predetermined before time.
Would one even say predestined?
Maybe. Maybe.
Yes, they very much believe God chose all this already.
Yes.
Number 3 on this list, limited atonement. This is the one we kind of touched on a little bit in our back and forth a couple videos ago. Jesus died only for the elect. His blood saves only the ones God has already chosen, not everyone. That's hard.
That is a very hard point. That probably the hardest point to swallow with Calvinism.
And especially as someone with a different background. Yeah. Number 4, irresistible grace. When God calls the elect, they can't say no. It's like gravity. You can't resist it.
That's pretty self-explanatory to me.
And number 5, perseverance of the saints. Or as we usually would call it, once saved, always saved.
Yep.
True believers won't fall away because God keeps them away from sin.
Yep.
Now, generally speaking, this is not my background.
Mine either.
This really, I don't want to go too much in my opinion here, but it really, let's just be kind. It really says God's in control.
Yes. Yep.
Sovereign to an extreme level. And not just it's his kingdom, but he decides every piece on the chessboard.
Yep. And that's, honestly, that's a good way of looking at it, is this is his world, his story, and he's writing it. And you're a part of it, but you're the part that he wants you to play.
And
for a lot of people, that's a really hard pill to swallow.
Right, because it would almost, not going my opinion yet. We
Yep.
gotta
Hold the opinion.
Right, because we might dip into it a little bit.
We should try to pull up the statistic on which one, like what the numbers are of the total percentage.
Yeah, we'll do that at the end here. Yeah, that's not a bit fun. Okay. The those are the 5 points of Calvinism. Again, TULIP.
Yep.
Total depravity, unconditional election, limited atonement, irresistible grace, perseverance of the saints.
Yep. That's one side of the coin.
Now,
Flip.
For anyone who we've already almost lost, the reason we're talking about this is 1, it's a good discussion, but 2, it's good to know what you believe. This isn't just a throwaway, it's not like this stuff doesn't matter. If one of these sides is accurate in part or whole, it actually does influence how we live our day-to-day life and determines how we worship the Lord.
Or it should.
Yes. Yeah.
And what I seem to observe often is that someone will have grown up or been a part of or just affiliated with a certain group, especially in this discussion, and then they'll just maintain that. They'll be like, oh, well, I don't believe in Calvinism. I don't know why. Or, well, that's just the church that I go to, or whatever. And they haven't really researched this discussion on their own.
So as people who grew up in the church, there is a time in life where, we believe because that's what we were taught. And that's usually, when you're a young one. Then, hopefully, your parents encourage you. This can't just be the religion of my father. Cannot be the religion of my parents. I need to understand how they got here and what is true and not true.
Yep.
And that's where you start asking your questions. You start going back and forth with it. You're not supposed to not question. Any religion you can't question is not a religion you should follow. You got to be able to question everything. That doesn't mean that you never have a doubt, but you should be able to ask a question, an honest pursuit of truth here. So,
Arminianism.
Arminianism, named after Jacobus Arminius. That's kind of a fun name. Jacobus Arminius. Sorry.
Glad you had fun with that.
Yeah. And as you could probably guess, as it's the opposite side of the coin, it leans way harder on human choice.
Yep. Free will.
Mm-hmm. Number 1, prevenient grace.
He'll get there.
Yeah, I'll get there. Give me time. Sin messes us up, but God gives everyone enough grace to respond. We're not dead, just blind and lame. God hands us up a cane, though.
I don't like that analogy.
You don't like the analogy?
No.
But I do like the first part of it. We're messed up, but God offers everyone enough grace.
Yes.
Okay.
Simple way to put it.
Mm-hmm. Conditional election, number 2. God chooses based on foreknowledge, but he picks people he knows will say yes.
Okay.
Number 3, unlimited atonement. Jesus died for everyone. The cross is wide open. Salvation offered to all, but not all take it.
Okay.
4, resistible grace. You can say no.
Okay.
Really focused on the free will on that one. And number 5, conditional perseverance. You can lose salvation if you walk away, not locked in.
Okay.
Now, some of these points, we went back and forth in the last couple of videos without giving them the...
We didn't really get into it.
Yeah, not giving them these official names.
Yep.
Because we knew people have debated this for a very long time. So, but I like the layout back and forth here. Because Arminianism is much more my background.
Yep.
But as I'm reading through these, there's some questions here.
Yep.
There's some questions here.
Yeah, I think we should start with point number 1. And I think, so let's hit it again and let's dig into what we think.
All right. We have total depravity versus prevenient, prevenient grace. Don't know how to say it. Prevenient.
Grace. Just say grace.
Total depravity, grace.
Okay.
Okay? Where you landing, man? Talk it through. Talk it through with me.
Essentially, the argument here is whether or not God gives you the ability to see his plan for salvation. Right? Was that a fair assessment of the point? One side of it is you're so dead in sin that you can't even recognize your needs for salvation, and you need God's divine intervention to lead you to salvation.
I think one thing that makes this topic very difficult, not the whole topic, just this point number 1, is a lot of us have grown up in a society where the Bible has already made its way through.
Okay.
So it's like we're swimming in water and then saying, there's no water. Because it's all around us. It's all we see all the time. We've already got the benefit of it.
Okay.
So that makes it a little more, in my opinion, difficult because we already have the grace.
Okay.
Maybe it wasn't a good example here.
Yeah, I'm not following you very well there.
I'll pivot from that here.
I think the conversation on the first point is, and the first one's not.
This is not a massively controversial one, I think.
Yeah, I don't think that's super controversial.
Right. Basically, God has to do something.
Yeah, it's whether or not God leads you to salvation, kind of, or you are able to recognize your need for salvation on your own. I would probably lean a little bit towards the Arminian argument on this side, but I can see both sides of it.
The next one is one that's a little bit more common to be discussed with different terms. Unconditional election versus conditional election. Unconditional, God picked everybody going to heaven. Conditional, God picked based on who he knew would say yes.
So I don't
like either one of these.
Yeah, I don't fall into either one of these. or I should say, I struggle to associate with either one of these.
Mm-hmm.
Basically, you have God predestined.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, this is the predestination
Yes,
argument.
this is the predestination argument. God predestined every single person that was going to be saved before the dawn of time.
Mm-hmm.
Versus God extends salvation to everyone, but
he still chose.
He still chose who was going to say yes.
Or he only extended, we'll maybe call it full grace,
Yeah,
to those he knew would say yes.
Salvation is available to everyone, but he only leads those who will say yes to him.
Now, why is it we're both, but like, I don't like either one of those? I feel like it doesn't give everyone a fair shot.
Yeah, on the neither one of them offers an opportunity for everyone. Both of them are excluding a certain group of people, depending on where you are. It's either you were or weren't picked, has nothing to do with you, or God knows your heart, and that dictates whether or not he invites you, or however you want to phrase it, offers salvation to you.
Yes.
I feel like the Arminian argument should be everyone is offered salvation. Read what it says again on the Arminian argument.
God chooses based on foreknowledge, picks people he knows will say yes, not random.
See, I don't know that I would agree with that.
Yeah, I feel like there's a third one here, because honestly, these two feel a lot closer than I think.
I mean, I do think that is the legitimate Arminian argument.
Right. That God bases based on who he knows will through free will make the choice. And the Calvinists say he chose who would pick who he.
Yes, it's whether God chose who will pick or whether each person decides whether they will pick, but he only offers salvation to those he knows will accept it. Mm-hmm. The Arminian argument sounds nicer because if you weren't going to accept salvation anyway, it doesn't really matter whether you were offered it or not.
Yeah, it doesn't feel as good.
No, it doesn't feel as good.
Because then it feels like, well, how was I supposed to pick if I was never offered?
Right.
You know, how can they accept Jesus if they've never heard his name? You know, it's that discussion, that verse is what comes to play in my mind.
Yeah.
Okay.
No, everyone wants the chance, even if they, we're greedy individuals is the answer there. Mm-hmm. That one's a complicated one. Mm-hmm. I don't think I agree with either one of them.
Now, I will say all 10 of these points, 5 and 5, they each claim full biblical backing.
Mm-hmm,
and
absolutely.
They each have usually several verses discussing them. It is a worthwhile read to go through those.
Yep.
Because as this was just starting, I was going through the verses there. I'm like, oh, okay. Okay. And it was a really good back and forth here. Trying to like, oh, you know what? Hey, I actually have to question what I'm saying. Well, are the verses in context? Are they not in context? You know what? Where do we land? But, so it was actually a really fun exercise.
Yeah. All right. Last thing on point number 2 here. I think the hardest part about point number 2 is if you believe in Calvinism, you're admitting that God created people or God chose for some people to go to hell and then created them to live a life that he predestined for them to go to hell in.
Yeah.
Which a lot of people believe that.
Yes.
It's just a hard pill to swallow and an even harder pill to convince someone who doesn't believe it that that's the truth.
Mm-hmm. And here's the thing, and maybe I'd love to see the stat on this one, if you are a Calvinist who believes point number 2, that would probably be because you're on the winning team.
Explain what you mean.
Sure. So if you say, look, God chose me. He didn't choose you. Nothing I can do about it because he chose me.
It's such a...
Right? You match that with Irresistible Grace. Oh, I had no choice in the matter. I couldn't resist it if I wanted to. And once saved, always saved. It is a perfect combination of... Look. He picked me.
It's such a vain way to put it.
I know. And again, I apologize to the Calvinists for that example. But I didn't have a choice in the matter. So...
Okay, point number 3.
Point number 3. Limited atonement versus unlimited atonement. Basically, if you believe number 2, number 3 kind of would follow suit here. Calvinists, Jesus died only for certain people. That is it. Only those sins were forgiven. Unlimited atonement, Arminianism, he died for everybody. Salvation offered to all, not all take it.
See, to me, this is a mute point. Or it combines with point number 2. Because
they're very close.
Yes, they are. But here's my point. If God predestined who was offered salvation and who wasn't, then it would follow that the sacrifice of the cross was only for those he predestined to receive it. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah.
If before the creation of the world occurred, God was like, these people will be offered salvation.
This is my team.
This is my flock, and this is not. Why would he send his son to die for a group of people he wasn't going to offer salvation to?
Exactly.
And that doesn't make any sense.
But it kind of adds some weird layer, I think, to the Calvinist argument of... So that means that only saved people put Jesus on the cross. It was only the sins of the saved, not the sins of the unrighteous. Right?
Again, I'll ask, what's the difference? What's the underlying meaning there? Because on the flip side, you have the Arminian argument, which is Christ died for all, to offer salvation to everyone. But if he's offering salvation to everyone, he wouldn't limit whose sins Christ died for. To me, I don't see the significance to point number 3.
So I think what it would say to me is, if you believe Jesus only died for certain people's sins, then those who aren't chosen, really, it's not their fault. Like, Jesus died and it wasn't their fault. Wasn't their sins he was forgiving anyway. He wasn't even involved in that. They can do whatever they want. They don't have a choice. They're not chosen. They can't be selected for the goodness of God. Dude, they do whatever they want. Yes, they're condemned to hell, but, what do you do with that?
Again, I don't see the significance to that.
Okay. Let's go to 4.
Okay.
Because this one, again, all these are so well tied together, which I kind of appreciate, because that does mean we have cohesive arguments here. Irresistible grace, resistible grace.
Okay.
Can you be called by the Lord and say no?
This is where I would...
So I'm definitely going with you can say no. 100%.
Okay, explain your argument before I get into mine.
All right. So as we look through the Old Testament, let's go a little OT on this one here.
Okay.
The Israelites, as they left Egypt, saw actual miracles. Okay? Saw the power of the physical God show up and do miraculous things.
Okay.
Not going into all of them, but a lot of really cool stuff. Then had a pillar of fire and a cloud.
You're going into them.
Yeah. No, sorry. Those weren't the plagues though, right? Those are miracles. Sorry.
Yeah.
Yeah. They saw miracles. And then said, is that really for us?
That is a fair point.
So, even those who you'd probably argue, were called, could absolutely walk away, unless this is a discussion of post-resurrection, pre-resurrection. So I think you could logically make there's a difference post-resurrection and Old Testament. I can see you could make the argument, but throughout history, good people, Israelites in this case here, would see God, be called to him, and then say no. And then maybe come back. And then say no. And then maybe come back.
Here's the question that I have on this point is, why does, in order for you to believe the Calvinist faith, why do you have to believe that you can't refuse salvation? Why is that a critical piece to that? Because you can still believe that God predestined who will be saved. I guess it's an argument of there's an exact number of people written in the Lamb's book.
Mm-hmm.
And
That probably not 144,000.
Yeah. You never know. No, but like that, I guess that might be the argument there, but
this one I think is probably one of the, I don't know.
You would have a hard time convincing me that you can't refuse salvation.
Right, because at that point, the argument that I would usually make here is, if I didn't have a choice in the matter, I didn't choose God.
Okay.
Which...
That's the whole predestination argument, though.
Right. So that... It's not love if I didn't choose it.
Who says it has to be love, though?
I mean, I feel like God wants us to love him.
Okay. Where does the Bible say that?
Okay, look, I'm not pulling up like a scripture reference here.
I know what you're saying, but
Yes.
So one of the big Arminian arguments that I don't agree with is the whole idea of it's all about a relationship and God wants us to love him and he cares about us, and those are all true things, but they're not critical elements to salvation in terms of the goal of salvation is not for us to love God. Does that make sense? Are you following me?
I believe I see the point you're making. I don't agree with the point you're making, but I can see the point.
Okay, so what would you say?
Well, if Jesus said, if you love me, you'll keep my commands.
Yes.
Wouldn't that imply that Jesus wants us to love him?
I'm not saying that Jesus doesn't want you to love him, but the ultimate goal of salvation is not for you to love Jesus.
Is this like a chicken and egg situation? Like faith without works is dead kind of situation? We don't want to get in the weeds a little bit?
Kind of, and we can not go down that road if you don't want to. But the Calvinist argument is salvation is chosen, predestined, period.
You had no choice in the matter.
You had no choice in the matter.
And you couldn't have had a choice even if you wanted it.
Yeah. The Arminian argument is, well, God loves me. He wants me to love him back. XYZ. So I have to, he's calling me. I'm not saying that's not true, but I think it can get too muddied in too much of the emotional side rather than the biblical standing of salvation is for forgiveness of sins and life everlasting.
I can see the argument, and I can see how people do get a bit emotional about it there. I can see that.
Your pursuit and love for your faith and God follows from your salvation, but it is not the end goal.
Got it. I see how you're separating them, but
let me put it this way. Christ died to forgive your sins, or to offer a way for you to be forgiven.
Okay.
You would agree with that, yes?
Yes.
He didn't die so you could love him.
It just so happens that if you accept his forgiveness, that is a step on the act of loving him.
Yes.
I see the differentiating line you're drawing here.
Yes. So read us again this point here on the Arminian side.
Resistible grace, you can say no.
So
I think you made your point.
I did.
I think you nailed that one there. And actually, that little small nuanced item there, where I just would have tied them together as one thing, but the separation of them, these are the kind of arguments that led to these discussions here.
Absolutely.
Which I think is actually quite helpful here. Because this is how, if we were the heads of the churches, you'd be like, we got to draw a line here. This is what I. Yeah, that's actually really helpful. That was a good example.
That's my personal thought on that. But anyway, proceed.
And number 5, perseverance of the saints versus conditional perseverance. Once saved, always saved versus you can lose your salvation.
Interesting.
Which logically follows the previous 4 points on each.
Yes.
Because if we're entirely messed up, God picked us before time started, Jesus died for my sins exclusively with the elect, and when he called me, I had no choice but to say yes. It makes sense that I can never lose that. That tracks.
It does. It makes sense.
It also makes sense that true believers won't fall away. God keeps them. So God actually prevents them from committing a sin like blasphemy against the Spirit or something like that.
Yeah, but even more so, I would say he keeps them on the path that they can't.
This really is free will versus not free will. Like my general statement here, and again, there's better examples, I'm sure, but the whole Calvinism argument to me comes down to we're mushy robots. We have no choice in the matter. We are programmed to do this. I can't really veer from it anyway. It's my destiny, designed by God himself, so who am I to fight it? And look, even if I don't share, his love and hope with you, it doesn't really matter, because if you were predestined, you would already be in the club anyway.
Yes.
I feel like it ignores all of the go into the world making disciples.
Yes.
Because you don't need to anymore.
Except for if you are the predestined means in which God intends to carry out his plan.
See, now that, in my mind, is a weird way to phrase predestination. Well, you're predestined as long as I do my part. That doesn't feel like predestination to me. Now that's a nuanced weeds argument.
I think it's critical to this conversation. That's what we're getting into here.
What?
Legitimately, though, okay. It's the so to me, there's the number 2 and number 3 kind of go together. Mm-hmm. Those aren't the critical points to this argument. Mm-hmm. Number 1, I would say number 2 and number 3 are the critical argument, but they go together. Mm-hmm. And then number 1 is not as critical.
Right.
And number 4, I don't think.
If 2 and 3 are together,
if you
number
believe
4 is a natural.
Yes. If you believe in Arminianism, you have to believe in number 4 on that side. I don't see how number 4. You could make the argument to me that Calvinism is one thing, but you can still reject. You could sell me on a lot of things for Calvinism except number 4.
The lack of ability to say no.
Yes.
And the weird item on these, as as we went back and forth the last few weeks, some of these points and the verses, because we're being intentional. We don't have reference material in front of us because it's a lot more free-handed here.
Yeah. The
verses that we would casually bring up came up in these arguments.
Absolutely.
On all 10 of these. It was great. Because I'm like, oh, here's where he heard that. Oh, here's where I heard that. There's the history on that. It really, I believe this is part of, battling through your faith.
Mm-hmm. I want to go back to what you just said a little bit ago about the predestination thing, which is, I think, a very critical part of this argument that's not really brought up very well in this.
Okay.
And that is, on the Calvinist side, you believe that everything you do was predestined.
Mm-hmm.
Now, some of them are a little more lax on that belief than others. Some of them are like, well, the predestination is really only for the salvation portion of it. But some of them truly believe, and I'm not sure, like, what the legitimate Calvinist stance on this is, but I'm pretty sure that it's everything that you do was predestined.
Like, I had Wendy's yesterday. Well, God said I was supposed to have an extra chicken nugget in that meal. That kind of a thing.
Yeah, but on a grand scale, it's that God orchestrated the entire timeline.
Mm-hmm.
On the other side, the Arminians believe that the story is still being written, and our choices are truly impactful in that decision.
Mm-hmm.
And I think you can get into these points back and forth, but I think this is really where a lot of people get caught on the one side or the other. It's that if I believe in Calvinism, I believe that everything I do was predestined. Or if I believe in the Arminian argument, I believe that what I choose to do has an impact on my future.
Mm-hmm.
And a lot of people want to believe the Arminian side. They don't like the I don't have a choice. So that wasn't really well brought into the conversation there, or as a point there, but I think it is a critical part of this. It is one of the most critical portions.
Yeah, an underlying question there is, what does it mean that God is sovereign? That's the underlying question. Does his sovereignty mean he dictates everything and every action of every person in his kingdom? Or he makes the rules, he sets the timeline, but he allows the people in the kingdom to make their decisions on the path?
Yes. This is a hard topic to cover, but especially because it's hard to go from one to the other. Like, if you believe one side, like, you almost have to fall in suit with the others, and you can't. It's hard to believe, part of this and part of that. And I'm not saying you should, but I'm just saying, like, you have to take the whole package deal here, and that's a hard pill to swallow sometimes.
Mm-hmm. Especially because we all have a general bias, and I'm not saying bias as in a bad thing. Bias as in a natural way that we think. Mm-hmm. Some people just have a tendency toward certain beliefs. That's fine, but it is our job to question those things to make sure. Well, are we a default XYZ, or are we an XYZ because we have researched, we have battled through it, and we have come to this conclusion as the truth? Those are very different. And often you'll find, at least initially on these discussions here, a lot of people you talk to, the first time they ever have this discussion, they are coming from a default position.
Yeah.
It's the only argument they've ever heard. So they've never even heard the opposite.
Yeah.
At least from a logical, honest item here. Because, so like, if we were to split the denominations a little bit here, we've kind of made a discussion in the past. You have Catholics and you have Protestants. Okay?
Mm-hmm.
As you further dive down, right, now we open with the Protestant. You have Calvinist, Arminian.
Mm-hmm.
Well, if you think the only thing in the world is Protestantism, then you don't even know about Catholic and Orthodox.
Right.
If you only know about one of these, this is where you begin expanding and expanding.
Right.
To find out what is true.
You go to the Arminian side, and then you go down to Baptist versus
Yeah.
Methodist.
Are we Southern Baptist, Northern Baptist? Are we Southern Baptist 1845, 18 blah, 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 19... Goes real deep, real fast.
Yeah, I saw a comic strip one time that was essentially that same conversation of two people, and it was like 37 questions down the line. They finally found one they disagreed on. They were like, you heathen.
Yes, that actually is an excellent tying bow on this one here. Regardless of which one you believe, well, I actually can't say regardless of which one you believe, because if you're a Calvinist, you know the others don't have a choice in the matter. If you happen to be on the Arminian side, oh my golly, I don't even know how to wrap this one up here. Honest conversation, pursuit of truth. There's Bible verses that support, I'm going to put that in quotes, all 10 of these points in one way or another.
Mm-hmm.
Now, that doesn't mean the verses are in context. That's what historically people have believed or anything like that.
Yep.
But there are verses you can use for this, which makes this whole discussion more interesting.
Absolutely.
Because the pursuit of truth is what we are after. At the end of the day, everyone from both teams does believe Jesus.
Yes. I think that's the perfect way to wrap this video up, which is that even this is not end all be all of the conversation on Christianity. Just because one person believes in Calvinism and one person believes in Arminianism doesn't mean that the other person's going to hell. Now,
unless you're a Calvinist, then you know the other. Yes, but I don't know. Maybe you're talking to someone before you get the call.
The Calvinist doesn't. I don't believe that the Calvinist beliefs is that you have to believe in Calvinism in order to be saved. You can believe in Arminianism and still be predestined.
Yeah, that would just be like, you don't know yet.
Anyway.
Yes. Sorry.
Do your own research. We're not going to tell you which one is right and which one is wrong. At the end of the day, the Bible's still true. And do your own research.
Yeah. Pursue God. We'll battle the rest out over time.
Yes.